Thomas had seen many strange skies in his years of traveling, but none like the one above the alien kingdom of Leora. The clouds here shimmered in shades of silver and violet, and the wind carried a hum as if the air itself was alive. He was not supposed to be in the capital city that day. His team of explorers had camped outside the tall, glowing walls, and Thomas had wandered too far, curious about the tall bridges and radiant towers. He always had a habit of looking beyond the safe path, and on this day, that habit would change his life. The storm came quickly, faster than any he had known on Earth. One moment the skies were calm. The next they cracked with light and shook the ground with roaring thunder. Citizens rushed to shelters, their long robes trailing as they hurried into glowing doorways. Guards shouted orders, guiding people to safe places. The air filled with sparks of energy, and the wind pulled with strange force. Thomas knew he should return to his camp, but then he saw her. At the edge of the wide crystal bridge stood a young girl. She was no older than 10, her face pale with fear as the storm swirled around her. She had slipped from her escorts in the chaos and now clung to the edge, her small hands shaking as the bridge trembled. The guards who were supposed to protect her were too far away, blocked by falling shards from a nearby tower. Thomas did not think about who she was or why she was there. He only knew that a child was in danger. He pushed through the rushing crowd and ran toward the bridge. His boot slipped on the smooth crystal, but he kept his balance. The wind pressed against him, fierce and strange, but he leaned forward and moved step by step until he reached her. The girl's wide eyes lifted to him. "Help me," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the howl of the storm. Thomas knelt and held out his hand. "Take it. I will not let you fall." For a moment she hesitated, frightened by the stranger's face. His human features were different from the people she knew, but the calm strength in his eyes gave her courage. Slowly she placed her trembling hand in his. The bridge shook again and the girl slipped. Thomas pulled with all his strength, lifting her into his arms. He wrapped his coat around her small frame and turned back toward safety. The wind struck harder, but Thomas lowered his head and kept walking. Each step felt like pushing against a mountain, but he did not stop. The guards finally broke through the falling debris and ran to meet them. They stared in shock when they saw the girl in the arms of a stranger. One of them reached for his weapon, but the girl spoke first. "He saved me," she said, her voice still shaking but clear. "Do not harm him." The guard froze, then bowed quickly. They surrounded Thomas, guiding him and the girl toward the shining gates of the palace. The storm continued to rage, but inside the tall walls there was calm. Thomas gently placed the girl on her feet, and she looked up at him with gratitude shining in her eyes. "My name is Alira," she said softly. "You saved me." Thomas gave a small smile. "I am Thomas. I only did what anyone should do." The guards looked at each other uneasily. They knew this was no ordinary child. She was Princess Alira, the daughter of Queen Silan herself. The queen ruled all of Leora, and her daughter was the light of the kingdom. For an outsider to touch her, to hold her in his arms, was unheard of. Yet without him she might have been lost to the storm. When the guards escorted them deeper into the palace halls, whispers followed. Servants, advisors, and warriors turned their heads. A human, one of the strange travelers from the stars, had carried the princess to safety. Some looked with awe, others with suspicion. Thomas did not notice the stares. He walked beside Alira, making sure she was steady on her feet. His only thought was that she was safe now. He did not know what awaited him inside the queen's court. He did not know that his single act of courage would bind him to this kingdom in ways he never expected. That night, as the storm still roared outside the palace walls, word spread quickly through the city. The tale grew with each telling. The human who ran into the storm, the stranger who faced the raging winds without fear, the outsider who saved the daughter of the queen. And in the great hall of the palace, Queen Silan listened as her advisors described what had happened. Her eyes narrowed with thought, and her voice was calm but firm as she gave her command. "Bring this Thomas before me," she said. "I wish to look into the eyes of the one who risked everything for my child." The palace of Leora was like nothing Thomas had ever seen. Its tall walls shimmered with living light, and every surface seemed to hum with quiet energy. Towers rose high above the clouds, connected by bridges of crystal that glowed faintly in the dark. Servants moved with grace, their flowing robes shifting like streams of water, while guards in silver armor stood at every gate. Thomas walked between two lines of guards, guided through hall after hall until he reached the throne chamber. His footsteps echoed against polished stone as he entered the vast room. The ceiling arched high like the night sky, dotted with tiny lights that shifted as if real stars floated above. At the far end sat Queen Selene, ruler of Leora. She was tall and elegant, her crown shaped like wings of light. Her eyes were calm but sharp, and even from a distance Thomas felt the weight of her gaze. The princess, Alira, stood beside her mother, safe now but still holding a small flower she had plucked in the garden earlier. The hall was filled with advisors, nobles, and commanders. Whispers filled the air as Thomas walked forward. He knew the looks on their faces. Some were curious, some doubtful, and others simply suspicious. It was not common for an outsider, a human, to be standing in the Queen's hall. One of the advisors, a tall man with robes of green, stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, this is the traveler who pulled the princess from the storm." The Queen's eyes studied Thomas in silence for a long moment. Then her voice carried through the chamber, calm and steady. "Step closer, human," Thomas obeyed. He walked slowly until he stood only a few steps away from the throne. He bowed slightly, not sure if their customs demanded it, but certain that respect was never wasted. Queen Selene tilted her head. "Tell me why you risked yourself for my daughter. You knew nothing of her, not her name nor her station, yet you carried her from the storm when my own guards failed." Thomas raised his eyes to hers. His voice was steady, though he felt the weight of every gaze in the hall. "I did not know she was a princess. I only saw a child in danger. I could not leave her there." That was enough. A murmur spread through the court. Some nodded quietly, others frowned. To many, his answer sounded too simple. Yet the Queen did not speak at once. She looked to her daughter. Alira stepped forward, her small voice clear but gentle. "He saved me, Mother. When I thought I would fall, he told me he would not let go. And he did not." The Queen reached out and placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Her expression softened for a moment. Then she returned her gaze to Thomas. "Many claim loyalty to my house, yet in the moment of need they hesitate. You, a stranger, did not. That is rare." One of the commanders stepped out from the line of guards. His silver armor clinked as he spoke. "Your Majesty, with respect, we know nothing of this human. He is not of Leora. He could bring danger if we allow him to remain here." Another advisor added, "The people already whisper. They say fate sent him. They say the winds carried him to us for a reason. Such talk can divide the city if not guided wisely." The Queen raised her hand and silence filled the hall once more. "I will decide his place." She looked at Thomas again, her eyes unreadable. "Tell me, traveler, what do you seek in this world? Why did you come to Leora?" Thomas answered with honesty, for he had no other choice. "I came with a small team to learn. We are explorers. We meant no harm. I only wandered near the city because I was curious. That is all." The Queen leaned back in her throne, thinking. She could sense his words carried no hidden shadow. She had ruled long enough to know when someone lied, and this man did not. Still, his presence was unusual, and unusual things often brought change. At last, she spoke again. "You will not return to your camp tonight. You will remain in the palace as my guest. I wish to learn more about you and about your people. Until then, you will stay under my protection." The decision caused another wave of whispers in the hall. Some nodded, others shook their heads, but none dared speak against the Queen's word. Thomas bowed again. "As you command, Your Majesty." The Queen's eyes softened only slightly. "You have shown courage, Thomas of Earth. Courage is a gift not easily found. Perhaps fate did indeed send you here. We shall see what truth lies in that." The guards escorted him to a chamber within the palace, not as a prisoner, but as an honored guest. The room was large, its walls glowing faintly with gentle light, its windows opening to a view of the city below. Thomas sat near the window, his mind restless. He had not planned to become part of their world. Yet now, because of one choice in a storm, he was tied to the royal house itself. As the night grew quiet and the storm faded beyond the walls, Thomas wondered what the next day would bring. Far below, the people of the city still whispered his name, the human who saved the princess, the stranger in the palace. And in her throne, Queen Selene thought of the calm in his eyes as he spoke. She wondered if perhaps this traveler carried something her kingdom had long forgotten. The next morning, Thomas awoke to the soft glow of light streaming through his chamber. The walls of the palace seemed alive, changing colors with the rise of the sun. He stood by the window and looked out. The city of Leora stretched far beyond the walls, shining like a jewel in the early light. Towers of crystal caught the sun and reflected it in brilliant colors. Bridges curved high above the streets, glowing faintly as people moved across them. Strange winged creatures glided through the air, their feathers shimmering with silver and blue. For a moment, Thomas simply watched in wonder. He had seen many worlds, but none like this. Every part of the city seemed both natural and built, alive yet crafted. The people below moved calmly, as though the storm of the night before had been nothing more than a passing shadow. A gentle knock came at his door. When he opened it, a servant bowed politely and spoke in a clear voice. "The Queen requests that you join her daughter in the gardens. She wishes for you to walk with her." Thomas nodded. "I will come." He followed the servant through long halls lined with carvings that seemed to shift as he passed. Some showed the history of Leora, battles long ago, and kings and queens who had ruled before Selene. Others showed stars and worlds beyond, as though the people of Leora had always dreamed of the skies. The garden was unlike any garden Thomas had known. Trees rose with leaves that glowed faintly, flowers opened with soft music, and fountains poured streams of light instead of water. Birds with crystal wings fluttered between branches, singing in clear notes that echoed like bells. And in the middle of it all stood Princess Alira, smiling when she saw him. "You came?" she said with delight. "I did," Thomas answered with a small smile. "Your mother asked it, and I am glad she did." "This place is beautiful," Alira laughed softly. "It is only a garden, but you speak as if it were a treasure." Thomas walked beside her on the winding path. "On my world, gardens are green and quiet. They do not glow or sing, but they are still treasures. Sometimes simple things hold the most beauty." Alira tilted her head, curious. "Tell me about your world." "What is Earth like?" He thought for a moment before answering. "Earth is full of oceans that stretch farther than you can see. There are mountains so tall their tops touch the clouds, forests of tall trees that whisper when the wind passes through them, and skies that change with every season, from the bright blue of summer to the gray of winter." Her eyes grew wide with wonder. "It sounds alive. Do the people there live in palaces like this?" Thomas shook his head. "Some live in tall buildings, but many live in small houses made of stone or wood. It is not as grand as your city, but it is filled with many voices, many songs, and many dreams." Alira smiled, though there was a thoughtful look in her eyes. "I would like to see it one day. The skies, the oceans, the forests. It sounds so free." They continued walking, and soon other servants and guards noticed them. Thomas felt their eyes upon him. Some looked with interest, others with doubt, but none spoke against the Queen's command. Still, he could feel the tension in their stares. Later that day, Thomas explored more of the palace. He visited the Hall of Stars, where the ceiling showed constellations that shifted with the true night sky. He walked through the library, filled with crystal tablets that shone when touched, each holding stories of the past. Everywhere he went, people watched him carefully. He was a guest, but he was also an outsider. That evening, Queen Selene invited him to dine at her table. The food was unlike any he had tasted. Fruits that glowed faintly, bread that seemed to melt in the mouth, and water that sparkled like starlight. The Queen studied him quietly while he ate. At last she spoke. "You see my city now, human. Tell me what you think of it." Thomas placed his cup down before answering. "It is full of wonder. Your people have built something both strong and beautiful. But I see more than beauty. I see eyes filled with questions. Some welcome me, some fear me. I understand this. I am not of your world." The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "You speak with honesty. That is good. Leora has known strength, but sometimes honesty is the rarer gift." Alira leaned closer to her mother and whispered, though Thomas could hear. "He tells me of Earth. He makes me see it in my mind. It is so different, yet it feels close when he speaks." The Queen placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder, then turned back to Thomas. "You have already given my child something many of my advisors cannot. You have shown her a wider world." Thomas lowered his head. "I only spoke the truth. I meant no more than that." But in her heart, Queen Selene knew his presence was already stirring change. The city was alive with whispers of the human who saved the princess, and she could not yet see if that change would bring peace or danger. Still, she could not deny the calm certainty she saw in Thomas's eyes. As the night deepened, Thomas returned to his chamber once more. He stood again at the window, watching the glowing city beneath the stars. He did not know why fate had brought him here, but he felt that this was only the beginning of a path he had not chosen, yet could not turn away from. Days passed, and Tomas began to feel the rhythm of life within the palace. He walked the gardens with Alira, listened to music played by glowing instruments, and spoke often with Queen Selen about his world. Yet as he settled into this new place, he noticed signs of unrest hidden beneath the beauty. The palace was bright, but the faces of some who lived within its walls carried shadows. Guards bowed politely to him but spoke little. Servants smiled but whispered when he passed. In the grand hall, advisors often looked at him with narrow eyes. He knew enough to sense that not everyone welcomed his presence. One evening, while walking along a high balcony, Thomas overheard two guards speaking in low voices. They did not see him at first. "It is not right," one said. "A stranger, a human, given a place near the queen's daughter. What if he brings harm without meaning to?" The other answered, "The queen commands it. We must obey." But still the people ask questions. Why should our future be touched by one who does not belong here? Thomas did not step forward. He quietly moved away, not angry but thoughtful. He had not come to Leora to cause division, yet his presence seemed to do just that. The next day, Queen Selen called him to a private chamber. The room was quiet, lit by a single glowing crystal at the center. She dismissed her guards, leaving only herself, Thomas, and Alira. "You have seen the looks," the queen said gently. "You have heard the whispers. Speak truthfully, Thomas of Earth. What do you think of my people now that you have walked among them?" Thomas considered his words. "I think your people are proud, and with reason. They have built wonders, and they live with beauty that most of my kind could not imagine. But I also think they are afraid, not of me alone, but of change. I am a reminder of a world beyond their own, and not all hearts are ready to face that." The queen studied him, her eyes thoughtful. "You see much for one who has been here so short a time. You are right. My kingdom is strong, yet it is not without cracks. Some wish for old ways, others seek new paths. Your arrival has stirred those feelings." Alira looked at her mother with wide eyes. "Is that dangerous?" The queen placed a calming hand on her daughter's arm. "It can be, if not guided, and that is why I wish to speak to Tomas alone." She turned back to him. "Your courage in the storm showed me that humans carry something rare. Your honesty with my daughter has given her hope. I believe you may help this kingdom in ways my own advisors cannot. But I must know, are you willing to stay and share what you know of your people?" Thomas hesitated. He had not planned for this. He was an explorer, not a leader, not a guide for a foreign world. His place had always been with his small team, moving from star to star, never tied to one city or crown. Yet he looked at Alira, who watched him with trust in her young eyes, and he thought of the storm when he had chosen without hesitation to protect her. "I did not come to change your kingdom," Thomas said at last. "But if my words or actions can help, then I will not turn away. I will stay." The queen gave a small nod, her expression calm, though her eyes showed a flicker of relief. "Then it is decided. You will remain not as a guard nor as a noble, but as a teacher. Share with my daughter and with those who will listen what it means to be human. Perhaps in learning of your world, my people will learn more of themselves." That night, Thomas walked through the city with two guards at his side. The storm had passed, and the streets glowed with soft light. Market stalls opened, selling fruits that shimmered and fabrics that shifted colors in the breeze. Children played with small floating orbs that danced around them. Yet even here, whispers followed him. Some voices spoke with respect, others with doubt. Is that him, the one who saved the princess? Yes, but why is he still here? He does not belong. Thomas kept walking, his mind calm. He knew trust was not given easily. It had to be earned, step by step, word by word. When he returned to the palace, Alira ran to meet him in the garden. She carried a small book made of glowing pages. "I want to learn more," she said eagerly. "Tell me another story of Earth." Thomas sat beside her beneath a tree that shone with gentle light. He spoke of rivers that flowed for thousands of miles, of people who built bridges from stone and wood, of songs sung around fires on long nights. Alira listened with shining eyes, and even the guards who stood nearby seemed to soften as his words painted pictures of a faraway world. Unseen from the balcony above, Queen Selen watched. She said nothing, but in her heart she knew that the human had already begun to change her daughter's view of the world. and perhaps in time, he might change the view of the kingdom itself. Morning light filled the palace gardens when Thomas began his new role. Queen Selene had asked him to teach Alira not with books or drills, but with the stories and values of his own people. At first, Thomas wondered how such lessons could matter to a princess. Yet when he saw Alira's eager eyes waiting for his words, he understood. Sometimes the smallest lessons could shape the greatest paths. They sat beneath a tall, glowing tree, its leaves shining faintly like tiny stars. Alira carried a small book to write in, though she often preferred to listen and ask questions. "Tell me of your people," she said, her voice bright with excitement. "What makes them strong?" Thomas thought carefully before answering. "On Earth, people are not the tallest or the fastest. We do not have wings like your creatures or crystals that glow with power. What makes us strong is that we stand together. When storms come, we build shelter side by side. When darkness falls, we light fires for one another. Our strength is in trust, in compassion, and in never giving up." Alira's eyes shone. "So your power is not from weapons or towers, but from the heart." "Yes," Thomas said with a smile. "From the heart, and from the hands that work together." The princess wrote this down quickly in her glowing book. "From the heart," she repeated softly, as if she wished to remember forever. Day after day, the lessons continued. Thomas told her of families who crossed deserts with nothing but hope, of sailors who braved endless seas guided only by stars, of communities that rebuilt after storms with courage and care. He spoke not of kings or warriors, but of ordinary people whose kindness made them extraordinary. Alira listened with deep interest. Often she asked questions that made Thomas pause. Why do they help strangers if they gain nothing? Why do they risk for one another when they may lose much? "Because," Thomas said gently, "we know that tomorrow we might be the ones who need help. Humanity grows not by standing alone, but by reaching out. It is our way." The young princess carried these lessons into her daily life. When she walked the palace halls, she greeted servants by name. When she sat at the royal table, she asked questions of the guards who stood silently at the doors. Some were surprised, others touched, but all began to notice the change in her. Queen Selene observed quietly. She had always guided her daughter with wisdom and discipline, yet she saw something new in Alira now. There was a warmth, a growing confidence that seemed to come from the human stories. One evening during a council meeting, Alira surprised the court. The advisors were debating how to solve a dispute between two districts of the city. Voices grew sharp, each arguing for its own gain. Suddenly Alira spoke, her voice small but firm. "On Earth," she said, "people share their strength when storms break their homes. If one roof falls, neighbors help rebuild. If one harvest fails, others share their food. Perhaps we can learn from that. Instead of arguing, why not join together so both districts stand strong?" The chamber fell silent. The advisors stared in surprise, while Queen Selene looked at her daughter with quiet pride. Thomas, standing in the shadows as a guest, felt a small smile rise on his face. The lesson had taken root, but not all were pleased. After the meeting, two nobles whispered angrily as they left the hall. "She repeats the words of the human. His influence grows too strong. Soon the queen will listen more to him than to us." Thomas heard their whispers, though he pretended not to. He knew that teaching Alira was not only shaping her mind, but also stirring unease among those who feared change. Later that night, Alira came to him in the garden. She looked troubled. "I spoke what you taught me, yet some seemed angry." "Did I do wrong?" Thomas shook his head. "You did right. Truth can sometimes make others uneasy, especially when it asks them to see the world in a new way. But do not let that silence you. If your heart speaks with kindness, it will be heard in time." Alira nodded slowly. "Then I will keep speaking. I want to be a queen one day who helps her people, not only rules them." Thomas looked at her with respect. In her young voice he heard the echo of the leaders he admired on Earth, not because of their crowns, but because of their care for others. The days grew into weeks. Thomas continued his lessons not only with Alira, but with others who came quietly to listen. Servants paused in their duties to hear his stories. A few guards stood closer than usual, pretending to keep watch but truly wanting to hear. Even some advisors, curious though still doubtful, began to ask him questions, and as the lessons spread, so did the whispers. Some said the human brought hope. Others warned he brought danger. Yet one truth was clear: his presence was no longer small. It was a seed growing in the heart of the kingdom. That night, as Thomas once again stood at his window, he thought of his own people far across the stars. He wondered if they knew how their values, simple and quiet, were now shaping the future of a distant world. And though he missed the sky of Earth, he felt that his place here was no longer chance. It was becoming purpose. The palace of Leora had never been quieter. The city below glowed softly under the evening lights, and the palace gardens reflected that gentle brilliance. Thomas walked slowly along a crystal path, thinking about the days he had spent teaching Alira and watching her grow. She had become more confident, more thoughtful, and more compassionate. Yet even with these changes, tension lingered in the palace. Some nobles and advisors were not pleased with his presence. Rumors had reached the queen that certain voices demanded he leave. Thomas had heard some of these whispers, and though they did not frighten him, he understood their meaning. Change was never easy, even when it came from kindness. Queen Selin summoned Thomas to the throne room that evening. Alira had already entered, her face bright but serious. The queen's voice was calm as she spoke. "Thomas, I have received counsel from those who serve this kingdom. Some fear your influence. Others see your lessons as hope. Before any final decision is made, I wish to hear from you. Tell me what you truly seek." Thomas hesitated. He had not come to Leora seeking honor or position. He had come to explore, to see the stars, to witness other worlds. Now he stood in the presence of the queen, expected to decide the role of his own life in a kingdom far from Earth. "I seek only to protect what I have already," Thomas said finally. The princess, when she was in danger, needed someone who would act. That was all. "I did not come to rule nor to change your kingdom. I only want to do what is right." Alira stepped forward, her eyes shining. "But you have already changed things. You taught me to see more, to think more, and to care more. That is why I want you to stay. Not for power, not for praise, but because the city, my people, and even the queen herself can learn from you." Thomas looked at her, feeling a deep respect for the courage in her voice. She had spoken the truth. Even if he had not intended it, his presence had already shaped the hearts of those around him. The queen nodded slowly, her hands resting on the arms of her throne. "You see the tension I warned of. There are those who want to see you gone, yet your influence and the lessons you bring are undeniable. Now the choice is yours, Thomas. Will you stay in this kingdom knowing the risk and the challenge, or return to your own world, where life is simpler and safe?" Thomas felt the weight of the question. He thought of the storm, of the moment he had carried Alira to safety, and of the trust she had placed in him. He thought of the lessons he had taught and how her eyes had lit with understanding and hope. In that moment, he knew there was only one answer. "I will stay," Thomas said quietly but firmly. "I cannot leave knowing that I can help. I cannot return to safety when there are still hearts and minds to guide." Alira's face lit up with a smile. "Then the kingdom will have hope, and I will learn even more." The queen's expression softened. She rose from her throne and walked toward him. "Then it is decided. You will remain in Leora, not as a soldier, not as a ruler, but as a teacher and guide. Your place is here, and it will be honored as such." Some of the advisors in the hall whispered among themselves. A few looked doubtful, while others bowed their heads in acceptance. The queen's word was final, yet she understood that earning full trust would take time. One of the younger guards approached Thomas quietly. "I do not yet understand humans fully," he said, "but I see that you act with honesty. I will follow your lead when needed, not because you are of another world, but because you have proven your heart." Thomas nodded, grateful for the trust. "Thank you. That is all anyone can ask for." That night, Thomas walked with Alira through the palace gardens once more. The lights of the city shimmered below, and the fountains reflected the stars above. "I am glad you stayed," Alira said softly. "I will never forget what you have taught me. Even when I am older, I will remember how humans see the world." Thomas smiled. "And I will never forget you. Sometimes protecting one child can change more than just one life. It can change the future of a kingdom." Alira looked up at the glowing tree above them. "Do you think the people will accept you fully?" "Not all at once," Thomas said honestly. "But trust grows step by step. And in time, they will see what I hope you already understand, that kindness, courage, and honesty are more powerful than fear." The princess nodded. "Then we will do it together." The night deepened, and Thomas felt a sense of calm he had not known since arriving on Leora. He had chosen to stay, and though challenges awaited, he knew the choice was right. His heart was tied now not only to the princess but to the people, the city, and the hope that one person's actions could inspire a greater good. And as they walked beneath the glowing trees, the city seemed to shimmer with quiet anticipation, as if even the walls themselves understood that something new and lasting had begun. Tomas had made his choice, and in doing so, he had not only changed his own life but had become a part of a kingdom that would never be the same. The city of Leora glowed softly under the morning sun. Tomas walked through the palace gates, his eyes taking in the familiar sights of crystal towers, glowing bridges and streets alive with gentle light. The city seemed unchanged, yet Tomas knew it was not the same. His presence had already touched the hearts of many, even if some remained uncertain. Alira ran to meet him in the courtyard, holding a small glowing orb in her hand. "Tomas, come quickly. The children are playing with the new lights. You must see how they shine." Tomas smiled and followed her. The courtyard was filled with laughter. Children chased the floating orbs, their faces bright with joy. Servants paused to watch, smiling as the young ones moved among them. Even a few of the palace guards stopped their patrol to watch the simple games. "You see," Tomas said to Alira, "this is what we hope for. Moments like this are the heart of a kingdom. When people care for each other, even small acts can shine brightly." Alira nodded. "I understand. It is not only about learning lessons in words. It is about acting with kindness, helping others, and sharing what we have." Later that day, Queen Selene invited Tomas to the main hall. The chamber was filled with advisors and nobles. The queen's voice carried clearly as she spoke. "Tomas of Earth has chosen to stay with us, not as a ruler, not as a warrior, but as a teacher and guide. His courage, honesty, and care have already touched my daughter and the hearts of those willing to listen." Some of the advisors shifted uncomfortably, yet the queen's eyes held firm. Change is never easy, but the lessons he brings are not of power or fear. They are of the heart, and it is the heart that must guide a kingdom. A few nobles bowed their heads in acceptance. Others remained silent, unsure but unable to speak against the queen's decision. The words of a human stranger had already begun to shape the thoughts of those who would lead Leora in the years to come. Tomas felt a quiet pride, though he did not seek it. His role was not one of glory but of service. He had come to Leora only to explore, yet now he was part of its story. He had protected a child in danger, and in doing so he had become a guardian of hope. That evening, Tomas walked with Alira through the palace gardens. The glowing trees reflected the colors of the sky, and the fountains poured streams of light into the air. "Do you think they will ever fully accept you?" Alira asked. Tomas looked at the people passing by, some smiling, some curious. "I do not know if everyone will accept me immediately, but acceptance grows with time. Trust is built step by step, with small acts of care and honesty. That is the same lesson I taught you, and it applies to all of us." Alira smiled. "Then we will grow together. You will teach me, and I will share what I learn with my people." "Yes," Tomas said, "and together we will help the kingdom grow stronger, not just in towers and bridges, but in hearts and minds." The princess paused, looking up at the glowing tree above them. "I feel like everything is changing, and it is because of you." Tomas shook his head. "It is not because of me alone. It is because of your willingness to learn, the queen's courage to trust, and the people who are open to kindness. I only showed the way. The rest comes from you and them." That night, Tomas returned to his chamber and looked out over the city. The lights glimmered like stars brought down to earth. He thought of his own world far away, of oceans, mountains, and forests. He felt a quiet connection between his home and this kingdom. Though he had traveled across the stars, he realized that what he brought was not just knowledge of other worlds. He brought understanding, care, and the simple courage to do what is right. The next morning, Tomas joined Alira at the balcony. They watched as the city awoke. Traders opened their stalls, children laughed as they ran along the streets, and the palace servants moved gracefully, performing their duties with pride. Some of the nobles approached curious, and others bowed in respect. "You have made a place among them," Alira said softly. "Even those who doubted you are beginning to see your heart." Tomas looked down at the city, feeling the truth in her words. It is not a place given by walls or crowns. It is a place given by trust, by kindness, and by courage. That is what makes a home anywhere. Later, Queen Selin met him privately. "Thomas, you have done more than I expected. You have shown not only my daughter but also this kingdom the value of courage, honesty, and care. I am proud to call you a part of Leora." Thomas bowed humbly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I did only what anyone should do. It is your guidance and your daughter's openness that allowed these lessons to grow." The Queen smiled. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to remind us of the strengths we already hold inside. You have done that for Leora." As Thomas walked back to the gardens, Alira ran to him with a bright smile. "Come, let us see the children play. You have earned your place here, Thomas. Not as a visitor, but as one of us." And as he joined them, the city around them seemed to shine a little brighter. Thomas knew that he had found a new home, a new purpose, and a new family among these people. He had risked everything to protect a child, and in return, he had been given the chance to remain. Leora had changed, but more importantly, Thomas had found a place among them. A place where courage, kindness, and the human heart were recognized and celebrated. A place where he truly belonged. The kingdom would never forget the human who came from the stars, and Thomas would never forget the lessons he had learned, the bonds he had made, and the life he had chosen to build among them.